All right, we are back, and this time in English. Nick Lafferty, thank you for joining us. Welcome to BCCC Talks at Expocine 20. Welcome.
It's a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you for the invitation.
Yes, thank you so much. So we're flipping this. We just finished the conversation now with our good friend Sérgio Saleitão, the Secretary of Culture and Creative Economy for the state of São Paulo. Very informative, really insightful conversation. And it was more on the public sector and how they influence and how they can help really boost the sector as a whole. And now we're transitioning a little more to our conversation here. So just to get back to the page, everyone here, Felipe Kuznir, President of the Brazil-California Chamber of Commerce. Delighted to be here today with Fábio Sesnick, the chair of the Media and Entertainment Committee here for the Chamber, and with Nick Lafferty from Creative Artists Agency. As I mentioned, one of the largest, not only talent management company, but also one of the biggest players in the entertainment sector here in the United States. So Fábio, I'd like to turn it over to you so you can introduce Nick a little more and brief everyone about the conversation that we're going to have here today. Thank you so much, everyone.
As you already did this introduction, but the Media Entertainment Committee have been discussing all the possibilities to make this bridge between California and the United States. And Nick called both of us, Felipe and me, a couple of years ago to say, "Wow, I am handling stuff in Brazil, and things going on, so we'd love to be more closer about what Brazil is doing." And we have been doing our events with CAA since the last 2 years, so it's really a truly pleasure to have been discussing and with Nick follow all the development of the Brazilian market. Yeah, the stage is yours, Nick. Welcome.
Hey, so thank you both. I the agent who was normally always in a suit have not worn a collared shirt in 7 months, so forgive me for my casual attire here today, but you both look very dapper. It's good to be here. Weird times for everybody, but the industry goes on. We're still representing our clients to the best of our ability, whether that be here in the US or abroad. And I think the pandemic has laid bare just a lot of the problems that we were collectively having as an industry, and now there's going to be some kind of new normal coming out of all of this. So yeah, happy to be here today to discuss any and everything Brazil, US. Let's go.
That's great. One of the things that's coming in my mind, so during March and April, most of the market were kind of trying to understand what was going on, but after a while they kind of restart the business. So how is this? How did you notice this flow? So it's pretty much we return to the same path, or we're still slow? How are things going in the TV?
I don't know if things ever go back. Hey, buddy. Sorry, guys. Hey, I'm on a conference call. I don't know. But you guys stay out there and watch that. The joys of work from home.
Can help us.
We'll ever go back fully to the way it was before. Honestly, I think that for a long time there was so much production going on that it's a real problem now. The glut of programming that we're seeing right now. The fact that there's not a lot of stuff and not a lot of new stuff for people to watch is tough. I've also seen just the massive amount that COVID insurance now adds to bottom lines of production. So you've seen a lot of really high profile things get canceled from really high end creators. I think that'll probably continue for a while. I think time will tell. If we can get back into production and we can stay in production, then it's going to be a little bit easier to kind of get back into the rhythm of things. And, I know that things in Brazil still kind of aren't fully back to, I know people are producing, but not at the same volume. People in the US are producing, but not at the same volume. The hope is that we can all kind of adjust our productions and production schedules and locations to content in the short term that is going to be conducive to actually getting made during these times. A lot of the bigger kind of epic 200 extras in a scene probably won't happen for a little bit, but we'll see. It's just different, I guess, for a little while.
So Nick, let's just walk back a little bit. Can you explain to the audience what is CAA in general terms, and then what your role is, and kind of the interaction that you've been having pre-COVID regarding the inclusion of Brazilian content or Brazilian talent in your productions?
Of course, yeah. So I'm a television agent at the Creative Artists Agency. The Creative Artists Agency is one of the world's leading talent agency. It represents writers, directors, producers, actors. CAA Sports is the biggest sports agency in the world. I think that for us, it's really just about how are we doing the things to amplify our clients' voices and to make sure that they're being represented in the way that they need to be. I think our goal is to work with the best talent the world has to offer, whether that be here in the US or abroad. And I think that one of our core tenets has always been, on the television side at least, to mirror our buyers. And as Netflix and Amazon and HBO Max and all these new buyers have showed up, and they're really American tech companies doing content in Portuguese in Brazil, I think that it is important for us to introduce a more aggressive American style of representation to face those buyers, really, because I don't think that there's a world in which we could be a really effective day-to-day dealing with global, right? I love the people at global, but they're not going to go to me for talent needs, right? I think that the world has changed enough, though, that we work with global on their international strategy. We have international co-productions we want to help put together for them. We have talent that they have that we're interested in representing other places, and I think that that's the same across the spectrum. So for us, it's who are the producers, writers, directors, pieces of talent that we think are best in class, that are doing meaningful, interesting content, that either want to be represented in Brazil, facing the American companies, or who want to do things on a larger scale. And not larger in terms of you need to leave Brazil to be big, but if you have an idea for a show that naturally lives between the US and Brazil, or Brazil and Europe, or Brazil and China, I just think there's more opportunity now to get that stuff done. And at CAA, we pride ourselves on having market intel, having the know-how, knowing who to call to get things done, and really sitting there as an advocate for our clients in terms of anything they want to do.
This is one thing that I'd love to hear your comment, but before the pandemic, the international business started to grow. So this is why you are looking what's going on in Brazil. Do you think that with the pandemic and what happened with the world, this is be a better opportunity for international productions, or that's pretty much the same?
I think that if anything, the way that the US has handled the pandemic speaks for itself, and the rest of the world figured it out way faster than we did. And I think that with the changes in our marketplace, we can't afford to just be an agency that focuses on the domestic. I think that now more than ever, we need stronger ties in Brazil, stronger ties throughout the rest of South America, stronger ties everywhere we are. We have large offices around the world, but we don't have an office in Brazil yet. We have an agent in Mexico, but we don't have an office there. I think that for us, hopefully what the pandemic has done is shown that, in this time where we kind of couldn't get our shit together, to pardon my language a little bit, but it shows that we can't just be reliant on the US. And for me personally, I think a lot of the best content in the world is being done outside the US right now. I'm an avid watcher of Brazilian television, European television, Asian television. I think if it's good, it's good. And I think that for that reason alone, and the fact that for all these companies, sub-growth, Fabio, you and I have talked about this, the growth of these companies and who's going to win the streaming wars comes from who's going to have the most subs outside the US. We've already seen Disney and Netflix and Amazon cop to that. It's no different from Apple. It's no different from the others. It's the US, you reach saturation very quickly. And in the rest of the world, there's the opportunity for exponential growth. And while that's still the case, and Wall Street here really values these companies based on their sub-growth metrics every quarter, then we're going to see more and more money pumped into these local markets. And with that comes more opportunity, comes more shows, I think more competition for shows, that's how you really start to see real windfalls for creatives, is when 5 places want the same project from someone, or 5 people want to be in business with the same writer, or this director is hot. That's like kind of what we as agents do, right? We're always looking to drive max value for our clients, and we understand how the platforms work and whether they work. They're always going to say, like Netflix is always going to say that they're local for local, right? It's a Brazilian business for Brazil, and which is partially true, but it's also, these shows get watched everywhere. And if they're going to say that they want to pay people Brazilian rates, but the show indexes 5 times outside of Brazil, then there's a discrepancy there that I think that I kind of like to fight, and I'm a crusader for justice a little bit. So I want people to be paid fairly for success, and that's kind of what I'm doing. I know it's a very long-winded answer, but I'm often full of long-winded answers. So
no, but this is good, and this is, again, man, and this is supposed to also be a conversation. It's not really, and this is great because we are going to be building on whatever comments you have for the conversation. And based on what you said, we were expecting tremendous growth in the entertainment sector in Brazil. The currency exchange rate is very favorable for the US dollar right now.
Yeah.
It's very, you can do quite a lot with, small amounts of dollars, which is good for the economy there locally. The thing is, of course, and I want to touch base on the fact that, because the panel is, the impact of the pandemic, and then how we're going to kind of surface whenever we're going to, resurface from the pandemic. So from your experience and based on what you went through beginning, of the year and the expectations and the plans, how were you able to pivot, or were you able to pivot at all to different business models, or to doing things more digitally, or having people, coming back to the studios, but with just much smaller scale or much smaller crew? What was that? What was the impact that you saw directly from your productions and that you perceived from the market and from your competitors, your partners? And then we're going to talk about the content for the future.
I think that you saw a real run on development from all the studios, right? People figured that everyone was going to be at home for the first time in forever, and you had everyone's undivided attention. You'd sit in front of your computer for 12 hours on Zooms and do nothing but read scripts and talk about work. And to a certain extent, that's good, right? You put a lot of things into development, but it also hurts because then there's a backlog. So we're sitting here at the end of the year now, at least in the US, with people not really buying anymore. We need to see if things go back into production before we know if people are going to continue to buy. We've taken out projects that are like super, super high-end auspices, and there's just no market for them right now, right? So I think as the year is winding down here in the US specifically, it's more like, what's an eye towards the beginning of next year? What are we going to be doing next year? What can be shot next year? There was a real rush at the beginning, for COVID-friendly content, right? Stuff that you could shoot, kind of like the movie Searching, through screens. Could you have people directed over Zoom? And, there was a few projects on Netflix that did it. I know there were some things in Europe. I think HBO Spain did one. And those are interesting, but those are never going to fill demand in a marketplace for more than like a little while, right? Because at the end of the day, entertainment's still escapist, and we don't always need to be reminded that we're at home forever anyways. So I think that a lot of the bigger shows are going to be a lot more challenged, because honestly, like on some of the bigger things that people are doing now, it's tens of millions of dollars in added costs that between the studios and networks, they don't really know who's going to have to pay for that. And those are negotiations that are ongoing. And what happens with the shutdown you saw on the Batman, like Robert Pattinson went down the first day. So it just becomes a little bit trickier. And so I do think that we're going to struggle here in this market for a little while. And Europe, as it's going through its wave right now, is going to be challenged. I think that LATAM is still a little bit TBD, but what I do know is that people are going to eventually just have to get back to shooting television, and we will settle into that kind of new, until there's rapid testing, until there's a somewhat acceptable vaccine. There are just going to be risks that people take, and I think that as time wears on, people will be more comfortable with risk. People will understand better how you're supposed to really take care of sets. And so for that, I'm cautiously optimistic about the beginning of next year and getting stuff back into production, and really making sure that it's all individual responsibility, right? So like, we know that if people need to work bad enough, which they do, and they want to work bad enough, then it'll be all right. But it's going to take a little while to get back to pre-COVID levels of production. And I think it's going to hurt the independent studios a lot because it's a cash flow issue. You need to pay people, a lot of unless you're backed by, hundreds of millions of dollars, it's kind of tricky to do gap financing or bank financing on your productions. So the smaller companies are going to struggle, I think, and you're already starting to see that happen. And that might speed up the end of the independent studio system here in the US and internationally. I don't know. I think there's still a need for it, right? We don't want 6 companies owning all the content forever and ever and ever, but they also have trillions of dollars in the bank that you can't really compete with. I think there's really been an upending of our business here in terms of Hollywood was always a very tight-knit community of people who understood their job was different than almost any other job you could do, right? Entertainment in itself is so insular and so strange to the outside and hard to break into that, I don't know, it was like its own bubble within a bubble of liberal California. And now that it's been truly globalized, and I mean, listen, Warner at the end of the day is a tech company now. Like that, Warner Brothers, one of the oldest studios, is a division of a phone company. So call that whatever you want, but that does not bode well for, the longtime execs who are being pushed out of distribution, like you saw with Jeff Schlesinger. Like, it's just, it's been an insane amount of change in a very short amount of time. There will be more change. And the only thing that I know for certain is that the international marketplace year over year will continue to be more and more important for this. In Brazil, I was talking to James Farrell the other day with my boss, Ted Miller, and we were asking him like what his most important territories were. And he goes, the explosion of Prime in Brazil in the short amount of time it's been there has been eye-opening for them. Like Netflix already knew that because they have such a large presence, but to hear him say that and understand that means so much more content coming through the territory is really good to know. So you understand like their team will be growing. Apple will finally focus on it. It's just, I see opportunity, right? I think that Brazil has some of the best creative talent in the entire world and now more of a platform to tell stories. I'm very impressed with what I see. And so I'm excited about that marketplace. As excited about Brazil as I am.
One question for you, for sure, if you can share some of your thoughts, but I'm really interested in understand a little bit about business models, because in the stream now, what we are seeing in Brazil, pretty much as we have here, all the VOD platforms are launched their own platforms in Brazil. So we already have Amazon and Netflix and now Globo, but Disney Plus and HBO Max, Pluto, all the other services are prepared to launch in the next couple of months in Brazil. What I have been noticing is that in the beginning, all these platforms was kind of buying out all the content, and the producer that create all the show, etc., become a kind of a production service, and that's it. So right now with this competition, I'm starting to see, and love to hear your thoughts, think like, okay, you can keep some of the rights, or I can kind of not buy everything, but kind of share with production companies some of the money. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about business model, how these things, not specifically anyone, but how do you think that this is going to develop in the future?
I don't think it's a good thing for producers. Right? These platforms aren't going to want to share rights at the end of the day, right? It's a worldwide buyout. That's the entire business model. Where it really behooves people and producers, especially in the conversation I have with our clients, is making sure that you're building in premiums to your shows, because they are taking away your ability to monetize off platform. Amazon, to a certain extent, will let you co-pro some stuff sometimes. I know that they want to work with Global Play. I think Global Play, honestly, is the most attractive person to do business with in terms of the co-production model, right? Because they have a very strong base here in Brazil. And I think Eric and his team there have done a really wonderful job of putting together a slate, engaging the public, getting buy-in from the corporate side, and then understanding that they're going to need to take some big swings. I think that they're doing a good job there. And I mean, if you just look at the rest of the world, right, as an example of what's happening, I don't think that Disney will be coming in and be open to to sharing rights with people. I don't think that Warner will step down and really be excited about sharing IP, because if you have a show that overperforms in a way that Money Heist did or something else did, and you don't have it across the world, then you're going to kick yourself for not having it, right? And I think that precedent has already been set in much of the world, including Brazil, where you're basically signing away the project for a small amount of money, your production services fee and your executive producer fee. What I will say is that we step in and try very aggressively to negotiate fees up and to build in precedent that is preferential to our clients. And that's a fight that a lot of the platforms don't enjoy having with us, because we ask for things that aren't typical of market. But we also view it as, you're an American company now doing business in Brazil. Don't tell us how to do business in Brazil to us as American agents. I think there will be equilibrium and a market understanding soon, but everything's still changing every day. I mean, anytime that someone wants to say this isn't done here, I'm like, well, you've been there for 6 minutes. Like, you can't really say that it isn't done there, because it's easy for you to try to sit on the studio platform side and say, we want as much as possible without giving away as much as possible. And you're welcome for the worldwide platform we've given you, which is true. I mean, distribution now, that the physical act of distribution, the physical business of distribution is different, because everything just goes on one platform worldwide all the time. It's good for creators to be seen that way, but they're not being compensated as if it were a global show. And this is something that we fight and will continue to fight for a long time, I imagine.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so, Nick, this is just a very casual conversation, and we only have, about 5 minutes left. So I wanted to get a little bit of your insights for the audience that, the folks that are watching us, most of them are actually based in Brazil. Can you give us a little bit of insight in terms of your strategy or your company's strategy as the economy starts to reopen, as the sector starts to reopen? Some of the sectors that you will be focusing more on in terms of development, or even when you look to Brazil, what would you hope that you find in Brazil? What would CAA hope to find in Brazil? Is it more access to better infrastructure to get better access to the development or to the projects, a more developed workforce, or looser regulation? What are you looking at in Brazil in terms of becoming a more attractive place for you to do business?
I'd love to answer your question with a question and ask what Sandro Saleta said about tax breaks in the state of Sao Paulo, which I understand are starting, but I think that when you look at barriers to foreign production coming down and shooting films there, which is something that I think I've discussed at length with Fabio and with a lot of producers, is really incentivizing people to come down and take advantage of the incredible amount of natural beauty, shooting locations, like great crews down there. Like, you just need to incentivize people. It's far away from the US, but if you have the right infrastructure in place and you have the right government policy in place, then I think that it could become a destination, right? You just have to give people a reason to go. And I know that I sit more on the TV side, but I've talked to my film colleagues about it, and it really is like, you gotta have the right people lobbying on your behalf to go do this. You need the high level relationships with the studios here in the US and the top 1% producers who can kind of dictate to a certain extent where they want to go shoot something. So I think on that end, having the producers unions and the government in lockstep on how they're going to attract more people down there, and then enlisting people like CAA and other whoever else, other agencies, other management companies that have the voice of the talent. Like, I think there's a meaningful way to push more stuff down there.
And Nick, just a question. I think it's something that people in the audience are thinking about, but who do you think that could be interest for you being in touch with? So we're looking for, let's say, directors, actors, or writers. What kind of professionals, what kind of companies, or what kind of assets can, let's say, approach CAA and send you a message and you be interested? So a great project of show, or a director to be represented. I think it's a great message for the audience, because people probably are thinking about how to do business with CAA,
Yeah, I think that like people always find good, like the good projects get found, I think, right, through connections that we talk to a lot of people all the time, every day. I wish that I could, I mean, post-COVID, I will be back down and I'm excited about that, but leaning on our producer relationships, leaning on our writer-director relationships, talking to our clients is normally like the best. If any connectivity to people that we work with already is really important because that's trusted, right? We know that a script coming from Rodrigo Teixeira or Jose Padilla or somebody that we already represent is going to find its way into our hands a lot faster. But I also enjoy meeting people, talking to writers. I watch a lot of Netflix. I watch a lot of Amazon shows that I like, certain episodes I like, pieces of talent I like, I will mark down. If I think that there's a way for me to help, I'll reach out directly. So I think that it's the same thing I always say. I focus on your craft, do the best job possible. The really talented people will stand out. And I think the really, really good shows will get made with good producers. Like lean into your producer relationships. Try to do things that elevate your craft, that elevate the genre that you work in, and dedicate yourself. I mean, we all spend our lives doing this. Like my life is dedicated to finding and nurturing and protecting talent and helping put shows together, shows that I want to watch. And it's exhausting, and I'm sure that there are a lot, easier ways that we could all be spending our time, but for some reason we're all crazy and have chosen this as a lifestyle. And as much as that, I'm going to give as much to myself as I can. And I really, I want to work with people that I find compelling, people that I find shiny, right? Just want to work with shiny people, I guess.
That's awesome. That's a great way to end it on a high note. Looking for talented, inspiring people.
Yeah.
You yourself, Nick, I got to say, man, you're an inspiration. You're so helpful, and you keep the dialogue open, and I really do appreciate that. So thank you for joining us today. It's happy hour time now in Brazil, so I hope people are starting to open their.
I hope so too, because I'm going to go do that as well. It's happy time in my room here. So
nice.
Thank you. I really appreciate it, Felipe and Fabio. It's great to see you guys. I'm sorry we couldn't do this in person, but thank you for the invitation, and please know that our door is always open, and we're looking forward to doing more stuff in the future.
Awesome. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for being
Thank you,
here.
Fábio. Thank you, Expocine. Ana Júlia, é com você. Obrigado, pessoal. Até logo.
Muito prazer. Obrigado. Tchau.
Bye bye.
Nós que agradecemos e chegamos ao fim, ao primeiro dia de Expocine 2020, versão 100% digital. Eu gostaria de agradecer a presença de todos vocês e a participação de cada um. Amanhã, 10 horas da manhã, nós continuamos a nossa programação, lembrando sempre que juntos somos mais fortes e capazes de mudar os rumos dessa tão amada indústria cinematográfica. E eu tenho aqui em mãos, nesse momento, o nosso troféu para homenagear todo o audiovisual mundial e nacional. Um beijo grande e até amanhã.